This is the story of two sisters who looked exactly the same, but were completely different inside. It is also the story of how greed can turn a dream into a disaster. In the bustling city of Sacramento lived twin sisters known as Grace and Vanessa. Their faces were identical, but their hearts were nothing alike. Grace was the kind of person who treated everyone with kindness, from the security guard at the gate to the wealthy landlord in the neighborhood. She worked as a nurse in the local hospital, hard-working, gentle, and patient with everyone. When her mother felt sick, Grace would sit beside her and say softly, "Don't worry, Mom. Drink this herbal soup. By tomorrow the fever will run away from you." Her parents were incredibly proud of her. But Vanessa was completely different. If Grace was calm water, Vanessa was gasoline waiting for a spark. Vanessa believed that hard work was something only unlucky people did. She spent most of her time scrolling through Instagram and TikTok, admiring celebrities and whispering, "My God, one day that will be me," whenever she saw a private jet. She dreamed of luxury, fame, and an easy life. While Grace wore her simple nurse uniform with quiet dignity, Vanessa dressed in flashy outfits that made the neighborhood elders shake their heads in disbelief. When the sisters stayed silent, no one could tell them apart. But the moment they opened their mouths, the difference was obvious. Grace spoke with warmth and wisdom. Vanessa spoke with attitude. Everything began to change when Daniel, a veterinarian living in Finland, met Grace online. Daniel was a quiet and humble man. He wasn't searching for a glamorous influencer or a woman obsessed with money. He wanted a partner with a kind heart. For 6 months they spoke every evening through video calls. Grace admired his sincerity. Daniel admired her simplicity. But Vanessa watched everything with growing jealousy. One afternoon she said with a smirk, "6 months of video calls and he hasn't even bought you a phone? If it were me, I'd already have an iPhone and a designer bag." Grace simply smiled. "Daniel and I talk about the future, not about phones." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Future doesn't buy wigs, dear sister." A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. A courier van stopped outside their house. The delivery man handed Grace a thick envelope. Inside were 3 things: a passport with a visa, a plane ticket, and a letter. Daniel had arranged everything. He wanted Grace to fly to Finland so they could finally get married. The flight was scheduled for Saturday, just 2 days away. Grace's eyes filled with joy. "I'm finally going to meet him." But Vanessa stared at the passport photo, and a dangerous thought appeared in her mind. The photo looked exactly like her, because they were twins. Why should Grace enjoy life in Europe? Why should the simple nurse become the wife of a successful man abroad? Vanessa believed she deserved the luxury life far more. That evening, she prepared dinner. She bought Grace's favorite drink and smiled sweetly. "To your new life," she said. Grace raised her glass, but inside the drink, Vanessa had crushed several strong sleeping pills. 30 minutes later, Grace was unconscious. Vanessa quickly dragged her sister into an old storage room behind the house and locked the door. Then she took Grace's suitcase, her passport, the plane ticket, and even the engagement ring Daniel had sent. Standing in front of the mirror, Vanessa wiped off her heavy makeup and tied her hair in a simple bun, just like Grace usually did. She smiled at her reflection. "The new Mrs. Daniel, that's me." The next morning, she boarded a plane. Everything went perfectly. At immigration, the officer compared her face to the passport photo. They were identical. He stamped the passport. "Safe journey." Vanessa could barely contain her excitement. Soon, she was flying across Europe, imagining shopping malls, luxury apartments, and glamorous parties. Finally, the plane landed in Helsinki. But the moment the airport doors opened, the freezing air hit her like a slap. Daniel was waiting outside, but he didn't look like the wealthy man she had imagined. He wore a thick winter jacket, heavy boots, and practical clothes for cold weather. "Welcome to Finland," he said warmly. Vanessa forced a smile. She expected a luxury car. Instead, Daniel drove an old pickup truck, and they didn't drive to a city. They drove deep into the wilderness. 2 hours passed, then 3. Finally, they arrived at a wooden cabin in the middle of snowy forests. "This is our home," Daniel said happily. "Our reindeer farm is nearby." Vanessa froze. Reindeer? Farm? This was not the glamorous life she had imagined. The next morning, reality began. At 4 a.m. Daniel woke her for prayer. Then came chores, cleaning snow, feeding animals, working outside in freezing temperatures. The influencer life Vanessa dreamed of suddenly turned into hard labor. But the worst moment came a few days later. Daniel asked her to cook egusi soup, the dish Grace once proudly described during their video calls. Vanessa had no idea how to cook. Still, she pretended. She threw ingredients randomly into a pot and boiled everything. The result looked terrible. When Daniel tasted it, he slowly put down the spoon. Then he looked at her carefully. "You're afraid of blood. You don't know our hymns. And Grace never had a tattoo on her ankle." Vanessa's heart stopped. "Who are you?" Before she could answer, Daniel's phone began buzzing. An email had arrived. It contained a photo. Grace was standing in a cyber cafe back home, holding a newspaper with today's date. Her message was simple. "The woman with you is my twin sister. She locked me in a storage room and stole my identity." Daniel stared at Vanessa with disappointment. "You betrayed your own sister. For a visa." Vanessa fell to her knees. "Please don't send me back." But Daniel shook his head. "You thought you stole a golden ticket." He paused. "But you didn't know the whole story." Daniel came from a billionaire family in Lagos. He had moved to Finland to escape people who only loved his wealth. Grace had passed every test of sincerity. Vanessa failed in just 3 days. Daniel sent her back home. The journey was humiliating. When Vanessa finally returned to her town wearing a heavy winter coat in the tropical heat, people laughed. Soon, the truth came out. Grace forgave her sister, but made one condition. Vanessa would repay every dollar wasted on the plane ticket. She would work in the hospital laundry until the debt was paid. 3 weeks later, Daniel arrived in Sacramento. He was dressed elegantly, revealing his true status as an heir to a powerful family. He walked past Vanessa without even looking at her. To him, she was just another stranger. But Grace stood waiting. Daniel smiled. "I'm going back to Sacramento," he said. "Welcome home," Grace replied. Soon they were married. And Vanessa. She attended the wedding, not as a bridesmaid, but as someone serving food to guests. And whenever people asked her, "So, when are you traveling abroad again?" Vanessa only shook her head and sighed. "My sister. Trust me, Nigeria is sweet enough." People in Abeokuta believed Vanessa's story had ended. To them, she was simply the twin who tried to steal her sister's life, and failed. But life has a strange way of writing new chapters. For the first few months after the scandal, Vanessa lived quietly. No more flashy clothes, no more selfies, no more dreams about luxury. Every morning she reported to the hospital laundry room. The work was exhausting. Steam filled the air. The smell of disinfectant burned her nose. Her hands became rough from scrubbing sheets and uniforms. At first, the nurses whispered about her. "That's the girl who tried to steal her sister's husband." Vanessa heard every word, but this time, she stayed silent. For the first time in her life, she worked, day after day, week after week. Slowly, something inside her began to change. One rainy evening, something unexpected happened. A black SUV stopped outside the hospital. A young man stepped out, tall, well-dressed, confident. His name was Adrian Walker. He was a British entrepreneur who came to Sacramento to invest in a medical technology company. Inside the hospital, he suddenly felt dizzy and fainted. The nurses rushed him to a room, but the doctor was busy. The only person nearby was Vanessa. Without thinking, she grabbed water, cleaned his wound, and helped stabilize him. Adrian opened his eyes. "You're not a nurse, are you?" Vanessa hesitated. "No," she admitted quietly. "I'm just someone trying to become a better person." For some reason, Adrian smiled. Over the next few weeks, Adrian returned to the hospital several times for checkups, and every time, he looked for Vanessa. They began talking. At first about small things, weather, work, life, but soon the conversations grew deeper. Vanessa told him everything. Her mistakes, her jealousy, her shame. She didn't hide anything. Adrian listened carefully. Then, one evening, he said something unexpected. "You know, most people hide their past. You faced yours." Vanessa laughed bitterly. "I didn't face it. I crashed into it." Adrian shook his head. "No, you survived it." Months passed. Vanessa paid off part of her debt working at the hospital. She had changed, but she still believed her life would always remain small. Until one evening, Adrian invited her to dinner. They sat in a quiet restaurant. Vanessa felt nervous. "You must think I'm pathetic," she said softly. Adrian leaned forward. "Vanessa, do you know who I really am?" She shrugged. "A businessman." Adrian smiled slightly. "My family owns Walker Global Holdings." Vanessa froze. The company was worth billions. Adrian continued calmly. "But wealth never impressed me." He looked straight into her eyes. "What impressed me was seeing someone rebuild their life from nothing." Vanessa couldn't speak. For the first time in years, tears filled her eyes. Not from shame, but from hope. 6 months later, another luxury car arrived in front of the same hospital. But this time, Vanessa wasn't inside the laundry room. She stood outside in a simple but elegant dress. Adrian stepped out of the car and walked toward her. In his hand was a small velvet box. The nurses watched through the windows. Some gasped, others smiled. Adrian opened the box. Inside was a ring. "Vanessa," he said quietly, "your past doesn't scare me." He paused. "It proves you know the value of a second chance." Vanessa's voice trembled. "Are you sure you want someone like me?" Adrian smiled. "I want the woman you became. After the fall." She slowly nodded. "Yes." And somewhere nearby, Grace watched from the hospital entrance. She smiled proudly. Because sometimes, the person who falls the hardest learns how to rise the strongest. For the first time in her life, Vanessa believed that happiness had finally found her. Her past was still there, like a scar that never completely disappears. But Adrian never judged her for it. Instead, he supported her. He helped her finish a short medical assistant course. He encouraged her to continue working in the hospital. "Never forget where you started," he often said. And Vanessa never did. A year later, their engagement became the talk of the city. People who once mocked her now whispered in disbelief. "Is that not the same Vanessa who returned from Finland in shame?" "Yes, but look at her now." Grace watched everything quietly. She could see something others could not. Vanessa had truly changed. But happiness sometimes attracts shadows. One night, while Vanessa and Adrian were having dinner, Adrian received a phone call. His expression suddenly changed. The confident businessman became tense, very tense. He stepped outside to answer. Vanessa could see him through the glass window. He wasn't speaking. He was arguing. 10 minutes later, he returned. "Everything okay?" she asked. Adrian forced a smile. "Just business?" But Vanessa felt something was wrong. Very wrong. 2 weeks later, the truth arrived, not as a conversation, but as a headline. Adrian's company was under investigation. Millions of dollars had disappeared from one of the company accounts. Financial fraud. News spread everywhere. Television, internet, newspapers. Vanessa stared at the screen in shock. This couldn't be true. Not Adrian. Not the man who believed in second chances. That evening, Adrian came to see her. He looked tired, exhausted. "Vanessa, there's something I need to tell you." Her heart pounded. Adrian sat down slowly. "My business partner betrayed me." Vanessa remained silent. "The missing money was transferred through my accounts." "So people think you did it," she whispered. Adrian nodded. "They are coming for me." For a moment, Vanessa felt the old fear return, the same fear she once felt when she lied, cheated, and destroyed everything. But this time, something was different. This time, she didn't run. She reached for his hand. "We'll fix it." Adrian looked surprised. "You don't even know the full story." Vanessa smiled softly. "I know enough." Days passed. The investigation grew bigger. Investors were angry. Lawyers were everywhere. And one morning, the police arrived. Adrian was arrested. The media exploded. Cameras surrounded the courthouse. People whispered again. Vanessa chose another bad man. But Grace knew better. She saw the determination in her sister's eyes. Vanessa began investigating, not as a detective, not as a lawyer, but as someone who had once made terrible mistakes and understood lies better than anyone. She read documents. She studied financial records. She spoke to employees. And slowly, the truth began to appear. The real criminal was Adrian's business partner, a man named Victor Kane. Victor had secretly transferred money while making it look like Adrian approved the transactions. Vanessa gathered everything, every email, every document, every proof. Then she walked into the courtroom. The same woman who once lied about her identity now stood there telling the truth. When the judge read the evidence, the entire courtroom went silent. Victor Kane was arrested. Adrian was cleared of all charges. Outside the courthouse, Adrian stepped into the sunlight. Free. He looked at Vanessa with disbelief. "You saved me." Vanessa shook her head. "No." She smiled. "I just did the right thing, for the first time." Adrian laughed softly. "You know something strange?" "What?" "You once tried to steal someone else's life." He gently held her hand. "But now, you've built your own." Vanessa looked at the sky, and for the first time in years, she felt truly free. After the courtroom victory, life finally seemed peaceful. Adrian was free. His company slowly recovered, and Vanessa had become a completely different person. The woman who once chased luxury and easy money now valued something else: respect, trust, and love. People who once mocked her now spoke about her with admiration. The girl who almost ruined her life became the one who saved a billionaire. Even Grace was proud of her. One evening, Adrian invited Vanessa to visit a new project he was building outside the city. It was a large piece of land. Construction workers moved around the site. Cranes lifted heavy materials into the air. Vanessa looked confused. "What is this place?" Adrian smiled. "It's a medical research center." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "A hospital?" "Something bigger." He looked at her carefully. "Do you remember the day we met?" Vanessa nodded slowly. "You fainted in the hospital lobby." Adrian chuckled. "Yes, but that wasn't an accident." Vanessa frowned. "What do you mean?" Adrian took a deep breath. "Vanessa, I need to tell you the truth." Her heart began beating faster. "There was no random illness that day." She stared at him. "You're joking." Adrian shook his head. I came to that hospital intentionally. Why? He looked directly into her eyes. Because I already knew who you were. The world seemed to stop. You... What? I knew about your story with Daniel, about the plane ticket, about everything. Vanessa stepped back slowly. You planned this? Adrian nodded. My company funds several rehabilitation programs for people who lost their way in life. Vanessa felt the ground move beneath her feet. So, you were testing me? Yes. For how long? Adrian hesitated. From the moment we met. Vanessa's voice trembled. You mean, every conversation, every moment? He interrupted gently. Everything was real. Vanessa looked away. Tears began forming in her eyes. You studied me like an experiment. No. Adrian stepped closer. I believed in you. He pointed toward the massive building under construction. This center will help people rebuild their lives. Vanessa stared at the building. People who made mistakes. Like I did? Adrian nodded. Yes. Silence filled the air. Then Vanessa whispered quietly, So, the girl who once tried to steal someone else's future. Adrian smiled softly. Became the woman helping others build their own. Vanessa looked at him for a long moment. Then she laughed through her tears. You know something, Adrian? What? If you had met me 3 years ago. She shook her head. I would have tried to steal your money. Adrian laughed. But you didn't. He took her hand. Because the real Vanessa finally showed up. Vanessa looked around at the construction site. Workers building something new, something meaningful, just like her life. And for the first time since everything began, Vanessa understood the real truth. The greatest wealth she had ever found was not money. It was the second chance she never believed she deserved.